Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spring cleaning unhaul. So I have never done an unhaul video before, however, my shelves are getting very full and I feel like there's a lot of books I read last year that I just wasn't a fan of. It does not mean they are bad books by any means, they just didn't fit my personal taste. So I'm going to be getting them off my shelves, giving them to friends, giving them to thrift stores, and so on and so forth. So stick around to see all of the books I will be getting rid of this springtime. All right, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that there are going to be 12 books on this list. Most of them are fantasy, either YA fantasy or adult fantasy, including one entire series that I wasn't a huge fan of. There's also 2 thrillers and a graphic novel. Also, if you don't know yet, I post new videos every Tuesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you want to, you can also hit that notification button so you'll be notified whenever I post new bookish content. With that being said, let's get into the list. All right, so the first book on this list, I actually did a full review for, and I will link that in the cards and in the description, and it is If I Disappear by Eliza Jane Brazier. I was not a huge fan of this. I really like the idea of the story. It follows this woman who is obsessed with true crime podcasts, one in particular, and the host of that true crime podcast ends up going missing. So the main character goes undercover and tries to figure out what happened to her favorite podcast host. And unfortunately, I just felt it was a little bit boring. I really didn't love the main character, and I really just didn't like being in her head, so I was not a huge fan of this book, so I will definitely be giving this away. I know there are a lot of people out there that love true crime podcasts, me being one of them, so I'm sure there are people out there that absolutely will love this book. The next book on this list was actually a recent Book of the Month book that I was very excited about and just didn't love, and that is Girl A by Abigail Dean. I'm going to be completely transparent. I actually DNF'd this halfway through. I just didn't love it. The pacing was very slow. There's also 2 different time perspectives, so you're kind of jumping back and forth without it being very consistent, if that makes sense. So like in the middle of a chapter, we'll just be back in time, and it took me a while. I guess I never really got into the plot. It is very intense and sad. This girl goes through a lot. Her parents physically abused her and her siblings, and it's kind of her dealing with that trauma as an adult and reconnecting with her siblings. I was not a fan. It's definitely a heavy, just not. I actually think I did a vlog where I talked about why I wasn't a huge fan of that, so I will also link that in the description. But unfortunately, just wasn't for me. All right, the next few books on this list are all fantasy. This next book in particular, I was not at all a fan of, and I wanted to love it. I heard great things about it, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. I wanted to love this book, and I think this book did have some really cool elements and some things that were done very well, but it also did not execute things as well as I feel like could have been executed. I feel like if this story was a little bit longer, I think it would have benefited from being a little bit longer. The world building, let me tell you what this book's about before I jump into all of this. The book's pretty much about this girl who ends up being in almost a harem and is forced to marry this like demon king, and she slowly builds connections with other girls in the harem, actually falls in love with one of them, and it really goes from there. And I think this story is a very interesting story that could have been done very well. I just felt like the magic system and the world as a whole felt very muddy and not very realized. I couldn't really tell. There's like different levels of demons, and I could not tell the difference between the two. I think the most powerful demons are supposed to look like animals, and I don't know. I just feel like if it was longer, she could have focused more on the world and everything, and then also focused on the relationships, and I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of this. Like I said, deals with some heavy stuff. I loved the romance. I thought that could have even been explored even more. I just didn't like the book as a whole, so I probably will not be picking up the sequel. The next fantasy book is Uprooted by Naomi Novik, and like many people, I actually really enjoyed Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, but this one I did not jive with. I was not a fan of. The romance aspect, I feel like, came out of nowhere at the end. I didn't love the main character. I didn't love the love interest and just the story as a whole. I think the only like redeeming quality of this book for me personally was the like aesthetic and the whole like dark wood vibe was really cool, and I like how that was done. But overall, I just wasn't a huge fan of this book. However, like I said, loved Spinning Silver by her. I haven't read A Deadly Education. I'm kind of worried about it because there's so many mixed reviews about that book, but I will be picking that book up in the future. Next up is another book that I thought I was going to love, and I've talked about this before on my channel, and that is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. I don't know why, I just couldn't connect with this book, and so many people were like, if you love A Court of Thorns and Roses and like books like that, you might enjoy this book. I did not feel that way. It is another Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I actually did like the main character a lot. I just couldn't connect to the story. Like every time I put it down, I felt no need to pick it back up. So I won't be reading the next two. People love this series, so definitely I would give it a chance if you like Beauty and the Beast retellings. For me, just didn't work. Next on this list is another very beloved series, and that is the Folk and Air series by Holly J. Black. I was not a fan of this, and I think it has everything to do with the Queen of Nothing. So the first book I thought was okay. I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, but after finishing it, I was like, not after finishing it. After finishing it, I wasn't sure if I was crazy about it, but then after like sitting with it for a while, I was like, you know what, that was a really good story. The second book I really enjoyed. I love the trickster element to the fairies, how they couldn't lie and how you really had to like decipher what they were trying, like their meanings when they say something. So, I mean, for those of you who don't know, it's like fairies can't lie, but they can also say things that can be interpreted two different ways. So it was very interesting, and I really liked the second book. I thought that was done very well. I hated this book so much. There was nothing about it that I liked, and it just brought down the series as a whole for me. And I was going to keep them, but honestly, I'm never going to reread this series because I remember hating the last book so much. So what's the point? I might as well give it to someone who actually would enjoy reading it. And yeah, just not a fan of Aaron Folk series. Next up is a book that I haven't heard a lot about on BookTube, and I had a lot of trouble getting into it. I actually tried listening to it in physical format and audiobook format, and both of them, I just felt the book was kind of boring. And that is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. I think this is a debut novel. I'm not positive, but it's very, very slow. I thought the story was like, it was a cool story, and it follows orcs, which I feel like isn't normally the character that you would follow, and I felt the pacing was very, very slow. I felt like the start kind of got it going, and then it was traveling, and I was just not a huge fan, and I just couldn't get through the pacing. Also, the audiobook narrator has a very like monotone voice that every time I would listen to it, I would end up nodding off. So I gave up. And yeah, I think there are people out there that will like this book. Personally, I was just not one of them. Next up is a book that I feel like I don't have to talk too much about because it's getting a lot of negative attention, and that is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I believe this is my first Alexandra Bracken book. I don't think I've read anything else by her. I just felt like this wasn't done very well. The world felt very murky. I didn't like that there was kind of like an old world setting, but also like urban fantasy. I thought the patriarchy and the society was just ridiculously done. I was just not a fan of this. It had a lot of issues. The pacing, the writing style was okay. I actually didn't mind the writing style, but overall, I was not a fan of this book. I will definitely be giving this away. And yeah, oh well. I was actually really hyped about it because I really like Greek mythology and I thought I would really enjoy it, but kind of a bummer. And the next book is, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. I heard amazing things about this, and I think that there will be people out there that really, really enjoy it. Personally, for me, I didn't like the way it was set up with the whole Game of Thrones fan fiction type thing. It just didn't seem very believable. I couldn't get out of like the Game of Thrones references, I guess. I don't know. something about it I just was not crazy about, and the way there's like bits of fanfic throughout the book that like kind of like took me out of the story, and I just was not, it didn't work for me, which is fine. I mean, I will definitely be reading other stuff by Olivia Dade. I know people love this book, so if you want a nice contemporary romance, I would definitely check this one out. Just didn't work for me. And the last book I will be getting rid of is The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. It's actually a graphic novel. I have to accept that I just don't love Neil Gaiman's writing style. I have read a few books by him because I know he is this amazing author, and the only one that I enjoyed was The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and even with this, I liked it, but it wasn't like one of my favorite books of all time, so I have to accept that I just need to give up with Neil Gaiman. But like I said, he's amazing. Everyone really loves him, so seems like everyone but me is a huge Neil Gaiman fan. With this, I liked the artwork. I didn't love the story, and that's about it. I'm sure there are people out there that will like this. The artwork was really, really cool. Just didn't love the plot of the story. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you for checking out my spring cleaning book unhaul. If you have read any of these books or have any different opinions, please let me know in the comments. I would love to discuss these books with you. And that's it. So I will see you guys next week. Bye.